Hi friends, my name is Angie. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. This is a channel I tend to like to talk a lot about books. I like to talk a lot about homeschool, especially homeschool as it pertains to books. So thank you for stopping by. This is a video with book recommendations for romance novels. Romance is a genre that isn't necessarily my go-to genre that I read a lot, but there are some novels that I have just loved. Have just kind of stuck with me, and the stories of the characters have stuck with me. So that's what I'm going to do today, my top favorite romance novels. So the first book I want to talk about is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I think it's just kind of a classic romance book that a lot of people think of when you think of romance. What I really loved about this book and why it has stuck with me is just the wittiness of the writing and just the depth of the characters. I feel like it's just such a character-driven story, and the romance between Elizabeth and Darcy is very slow-moving, but I think it's just a really beautiful story, and you just really feel you feel the emotions of the characters, both Darcy and Elizabeth and all the other Bennet sisters. And so it is definitely, to me, one of those books that kind of sticks out as a good romance. Okay, so the second book that came to mind for the best romance books, the ones with the best love stories, is The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks. So, I mean, most people have seen the movie, but the book is excellent as well. It's just a story of these two characters, Allie and Noah. It's pre-World War II, where they meet and they fall in love and they're young, and it's just such a sweet, pure love. As a love of 18-year-olds, which that first love, you just really love the characters. You're just so engaged or invested in their love. And then I just felt so heartbroken when the families were like, no. Then the story picks back up later, and they're changed, and they've grown, and they have a depthness to their life and what they need, but their love is still there, and it's just so evident, and you just feel it for these characters. And then the story is like, will she choose him, the seeming love of her life, or will she choose the more expected person? Okay, so the third book that's on my list, I actually do have a copy of, and I love this book. The book is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. So this is such a good book. What I like about this book, it is definitely a romance, but it's not just a romance. It kind of has some historical fiction around it. It also has some science fiction. It's about this woman, Claire, who's a World War II or post-World War II nurse. And she is going on her second honeymoon with her husband after the war into Scotland, and then through a turn of events, she travels through time back to the 18th century Scotland, which it's very confusing at first. She doesn't know where she's at, and then she's taken by this clan, this local clan, the Mackenzie clan, and then there's this man named Jamie who is, I think, the nephew of the head clan person. In order to keep her safe, they decide that she needs to marry Jamie and become a Scottish citizen. And why I picked this, there's just this sweetness in their story where they're thrown together, and you'd be like, oh, probably it's going to be terrible, but then they start to appreciate each other and fall in love. And even though they're married prior to falling in love, you can really feel it. You can feel their characters' heart for each other, and it's really sweet. And then the story is just really exciting and fun to read. So I highly recommend this one. The fourth book that I have on my list of best romances I've ever read is The Time Traveler's Wife. So I'll put up a picture. I loved this book. I feel like it just really stuck with me. So it's basically a story of a man who has a genetic disorder that causes him to travel through time, but unexpectedly, and to unexpected locations where then he lands there and he has no clothes. And so it's just a very interesting premise. And then the story is more told if you're like, because it's a time-driven story, but the baseline that kind of keeps it steady is the wife. So you hear her story of like when she first meets him as a 6-year-old, and then he keeps coming back and he lets slip that like they're going to be married someday, and then you just follow this where she she can't predict when he's going to come back. They get married and then he leaves, and then they try and have kids, and that's a challenge because of the genetic disorder and all of these things. And I just really felt the depth of the emotion between those two characters, mostly because from the wife, her perspective of like waiting. She cares so much for this man that he can be gone for years. If I remember right, there was a point where he's like, you need to move on. You cannot wait for me. It is not worth it. It's not worth your entire life. And she can't help herself. So those four books are the main ones. Pride and Prejudice, The Notebook, Time Traveler's Wife, Outlander, that I really have stuck with me of just this element of like deep love, like epic love, if you will. And then I actually have a fifth one that's, I wouldn't put in that category, but I just finished it and I enjoyed it. And it's called The City Baker's Guide to Country Living by Louise Miller. It's just really cute. I think I was drawn to this book because it was recommended as a book that is kind of like the Gilmore Girls. I also just enjoy stories about baking and cooking and in the kitchen. This is just a really entertaining book about a girl who was who just made some bad choices. She was in the city, and then she decides to kind of change her life, and she moves to the country and starts working for this inn as their baker, and meets this man, and then she falls in love with him, she falls in love with his family, and she starts to really just have more of a depth of character, and she's growing as a person, and then there's some things that fall apart and then get resolved, just kind of like a classic romance story. But I really did enjoy it. It's a quick read, it's an easy read, it's not quite as heart-wrenching as some of the other ones, but it's enjoyable. So I wanted to kind of toss this on the end of my best romance ever list. So anyway, I recommend that. All right, so that is what I have. Those are the books I wanted to recommend. I just wanted to take this February to look back on books that have a very strong love story element to them that I have just thoroughly enjoyed over the years. And so, yeah, that was what I had for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my recommendations. Please comment down below if you have read them, if you agree. If there's others that you would recommend that are kind of similar, I would love to hear that, because I don't pick up romance too often, but I do enjoy them. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and please consider liking and subscribing, and have a good day. Take care.